My mother walked into my Aunt Ruth's will, reading with her husband beside her, and said, "I am her daughter. This should not even be a question." 15 years. That was how long it had been since I had seen her face anywhere except in old photos Aunt Ruth kept in a shoebox. 15 years with no birthday card, no call, no Christmas envelope, no message through a cousin, no apology, nothing. But there she was sitting across from me in a gray coat, acting like the room belonged to her. Her husband Grant sat beside her, leaning back like this was a business meeting, and not the first time my mother had looked me in the face since she left me on the front steps with a backpack and a bowl of cereal going soft in my lap. "We do not want this to become ugly." That was when I knew why he had come. Not for grief, not for family, for pressure. Before Patricia could read a line, my mother said, "I just want what is fair." Fair. That word had sat on my life like a stone since I was 10 years old. If you were 10 sitting on those steps, would you still wait for the people who left, or would you walk toward the person who drove through the dark to get you? The morning my parents left, I was wearing a yellow sweatshirt with a grape juice stain on the sleeve. I sat on the front steps of our rental house in Dayton because my mother told me they needed to load the car. I thought we were moving. There had been boxes for days. My father had taken the television first, then the good pans, then the photo frames from the hallway. My mother said not to touch anything because I always got in the way. So I sat there with my cereal bowl. The car backed out. My mother looked at me through the passenger window. At 10, your mind builds bridges for adults who do not deserve them. I thought they were turning around. I thought they forgot something. I thought they forgot me by accident. I waited until the cereal was no longer cereal. Then I went inside. The house looked wrong. Not empty. Selected. The things they wanted were gone. The things they did not want were still there. My backpack. My winter coat. My sneakers. Me. On the kitchen table was a note written on the back of a grocery receipt. "Ruth has room. We need a fresh start. Do not make this harder. No address. No phone number. No I love you. No when we come back. Just Ruth has room." Aunt Ruth did not have room. She had a small blue house outside Columbus with 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a porch swing, 3 cats and books stacked where other people kept lamps. She had no child's room ready. She had no idea her younger sister had decided to leave a child at the edge of her life like a box on a curb. Our landline had already been disconnected. I went next door to Mrs. Alvarez, who let me use her phone. When Aunt Ruth answered, I said Mom and Dad left. She went quiet. The kind of quiet where an adult understands something terrible before a child finishes saying it. Then she said, "Nora, honey, where are you right now?" I said, "Next door." She said, "Stay there. Put Mrs. Alvarez on the phone." 8 hours. That was how long Aunt Ruth drove. She arrived after 2 in the morning. Her cardigan was buttoned wrong. Her hair was flat on one side. Her purse was open. She looked angry until she saw me. Then her face broke. She knelt in Mrs. Alvarez's doorway and opened her arms. I stepped into them. Finally, she pulled back, put both hands on my face and said, "You are not sleeping on those steps another night." That was the first promise an adult made me and kept. The next morning I woke up in her bed and heard her in the kitchen on the phone. No, Linda did not call me. No, I did not agree to this. Yes, the child is with me. No, I am not sending her anywhere until there is a legal record of what happened. That was the first time I heard Aunt Ruth say legal record. She wrote the date my parents left. She kept the grocery receipt note inside a plastic sleeve. She called a family attorney named Patricia Hale. She called child services and reported exactly what happened. She filed for guardianship. She documented that my parents could not be reached. She saved returned letters, call logs, school forms, medical forms, and every permission slip she signed because someone had to. A month after I moved in, I found a file box in the dining room labeled Nora, Legal, and School. Aunt Ruth saw me staring at it. She said, "That file is not a punishment. It is a shield." I asked, "From what?" She said, "From anyone who tries to rewrite what happened." By 25, I understood. Some people do not need the truth to vanish. They only need everyone else to get tired of defending it. Living with Aunt Ruth was not magical at first. I woke up at small sounds. I kept my backpack packed for months. I washed dishes before she could ask. I asked permission for apples, shampoo, and sitting on the porch. One snowy Saturday morning, after I apologized 3 times for spilling jam, she set down her coffee and said, "Nora, listen carefully. You do not have to earn your place here." I froze. She said, "You live here. This is your home. Not because you behave perfectly, not because you are useful, because I say so, and because I mean it." Then she slid a napkin toward me. "You can clean the jam because it is sticky, not because you are in trouble." That was Aunt Ruth, precise even when saving your life. She enrolled me in school. She went to parent-teacher conferences with a notebook open. She came to the winter concert where I barely sang and clapped like I had carried the whole song. When I brought home a report card with a C in math, she put it on the refrigerator. I said the C is bad. She said the C is information. Then she found a retired math teacher and paid her in homemade bread and garden tomatoes to tutor me. Healing came like a hallway lamp left on every night until I stopped needing it. It came like Aunt Ruth teaching me to read a lease before signing it. It came like her saying I need to think about that whenever someone tried to rush her. It came like her showing me how to keep copies because paper made lies look smaller. By 16, my mother had not contacted me in 6 years. No cards, no calls, no messages. Aunt Ruth had sent 2 certified letters after Patricia advised her to document everything. One came back unable to forward. One came back refused. Refused. I stared at that word for a long time when I found it in the file at 17. Aunt Ruth sat beside me. I asked, did she refuse me? Aunt Ruth closed her eyes for half a second. Then she said, she refused a letter. Do not let her make herself bigger than that. I went to the state university 40 minutes away and studied communications. By 23, I had my first real job at a nonprofit in Columbus. By 24, I had an apartment 10 minutes from Aunt Ruth's house. By 25, 15 years had passed since the morning on those steps. I had keys to both places, one difficult cat that used to be hers but had emotionally selected me, and a Sunday routine that involved coffee at her kitchen table, and a list of repairs she pretended she did not need help with. She had a bad hip by then. She also had been meeting with Patricia Hale. I knew it in a general way. Aunt Ruth believed wills were responsible like smoke detectors and extra batteries. She told me once, I am not planning to die, Nora. I am planning not to leave a mess. She was stable through the weekend. On Tuesday morning, she told me to go to work. I said I could stay. She said, Nora, if you hover any harder, I will need a permit for you. I laughed because she wanted me to. I kissed her forehead. She told me to bring the blue cardigan later because hospitals had no respect for temperature. At 11:14, my phone rang. Aunt Ruth was gone. I sat beside her and held her hand. It was still warm enough for my mind to make one last stupid argument. Then I cried into the hospital sheet like I was 10 again. Patricia called 2 days later. She said the will was clear, and the process should be simple. She asked me to come the following Thursday. I thought it would be me, Patricia, maybe Margaret from church, maybe the library representative receiving Aunt Ruth's first editions. I did not expect my mother. I did not expect Grant. 15 years later, all that history sat between us in Patricia's conference room before she even opened the blue folder. My mother stood when I walked in. Nora, she said. Look at you. Grant stood 2 slower, broad-shouldered silver, haired with a watch that wanted to be noticed. He said, we have heard a lot about you. From who? The woman who had not said my name to me in 15 years. Patricia saved me from answering. Please everyone take a seat. I sat at the far end of the table because I wanted the file between us. My mother said, I know this is emotional. Cheryl and I had our differences, but sisters are sisters. Grant placed his hand over hers. Linda told me Cheryl offered to take Nora in, he said. Families make difficult arrangements sometimes. That does not make this abandonment. There it was. Patricia began reading. Aunt Ruth left her Subaru to Margaret from church. She left her first edition books to the Columbus Public Library. Then Patricia turned the page. The house at Maple Finch Road, including all land contents not otherwise designated, and the rear cottage unit went to me. My mother's face changed. Not dramatically. Just enough. Patricia continued. The investment account went to me. The savings account went to me. The life insurance beneficiary was already listed as me, and had been for years. Grant sat straighter. My mother said, wait. Patricia paused. Are you saying she left everything to Nora? Patricia said. The estate plan leaves the remaining assets to Nora Whitaker, yes. My mother made a sound that almost became a laugh. That cannot be right. Then she turned to me. Nora, sweetheart, you have to understand. Cheryl was my sister. You lived with her, yes, but I am her closest living blood relative. Grant added, we are not saying Nora should get nothing. We. He said it like he had been there for parent-teacher conferences, physical therapy rides, Sunday coffee, and the last warm hour of Aunt Ruth's hand in mine. My mother said Cheryl helped you because she felt guilty. That does not make you her daughter, and it does not give you the right to take the whole family estate. There it was. Take. I said nothing. Patricia did. Linda Cheryl anticipated this concern. My mother blinked. Patricia opened a second folder. She said there is an addendum to the will and a letter of intent. Grant frowned. A letter of intent is not the same as a legal instrument. Patricia looked at him calmly. Correct. The addendum is the legal instrument. The letter explains Cheryl's intent in her own words. My mother leaned back. Fine, read it. Patricia did not read yet. She placed documents on the table one by one. Guardianship order. Child welfare intake record. Returned certified letters. School enrollment authorization. Medical authorization. Financial support ledger. My mother stared at the papers. Grant's face shifted from confidence to calculation. When someone disappears for 15 years and comes back for the house, do you hear regret or do you hear timing? If you like stories where the truth does not rush but still lands, subscribe and stay with me, because this was where my mother's version started losing to the record. Patricia touched the first page. Cheryl Ruth Whitaker was granted legal guardianship of Nora Elaine Whitaker after Nora was left without parental care at age 10. Attempts to contact Linda Whitaker and Daniel Whitaker were documented. No financial support was received from either parent after the date of guardianship. No birthday communication, school communication, medical communication, or written parental inquiry appears in the file after the second returned certified letter. My mother whispered. She kept all that. I finally looked at her. Yes, one word. It was enough. Grant said, lots of families handle things informally. That does not prove abandonment. Patricia turned another page. The original note was preserved. My mother went pale. I had not seen that note since I was 10. Not physically. It had lived in me in pieces. Ruth has room. Fresh start. Do not make this harder. Patricia slid a copy across the table. My mother did not touch it. Grant did. He read it once. Then again. His jaw tightened. Linda, he said quietly, you told me your sister offered to take her. That sentence changed the room. My mother turned toward him. This is not the time. He looked at her. You said Cheryl wanted a child in the house. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. My mother reached for the note, but Patricia placed one hand lightly on the copy. That remains part of the estate file. Linda pulled her hand back. Patricia continued. The addendum states that Cheryl considered all surviving relatives and intentionally excluded Linda Whitaker Monroe from any inheritance. It further states that if any excluded party contests the will on the basis of undue influence, diminished capacity, or manipulation by Nora Whitaker, the estate is authorized to use estate funds to defend the will and submit the guardianship. Record abandonment documentation and Cheryl's physician. Capacity letters as supporting evidence. Then Patricia added the part that made Grant stop moving. The addendum cannot stop anyone from filing a contest. What it does is make the cost of that contest clear. If Linda claims manipulation, the full record of abandonment becomes part of the defense. Grant was silent. My mother said physician capacity letters. Patricia said Cheryl had her capacity evaluated when she updated her estate plan at 63 and again after her hip surgery. Both letters are in the file. Grant's voice dropped. So if we contest, all of this becomes part of the court record. Patricia said, that is correct. My mother looked at me with wet eyes. Nora, I was young. You were 34, I said. She flinched. I had not planned to say it, but the number had lived in my head since I was old enough to count backward. 10-year-old me had been a child. 34-year-old her had been a woman with a car, a husband, a sister, a phone, and choices. She said, your father was impossible then. You do not know what it was like. I said, I know what the porch felt like at 2 a.m. The room went quiet. Then she wiped under one eye and said, Cheryl poisoned you against me. That was the first sentence that made my hands shake. Not because it was sharp, because it was old. People who leave always need the person who stayed to be the villain. Otherwise, they have to look at what they chose. I said, Aunt Ruth never said a cruel word about you to me. Linda laughed once. Of course she did not. That was her style. Quiet judgment. Saint Cheryl. Patricia's eyes sharpened. Nora Cheryl left a private letter to be read if Linda attended this meeting. You are not required to read it aloud. My mother stared. A letter. Patricia looked at me. She wanted you to decide. The envelope was cream-colored. My name was on the front in Aunt Ruth's handwriting. Nora, if she comes. 4 words. I opened the envelope. Inside was 1 page. Aunt Ruth had never wasted paper. My hands shook once, then steadied. I read, Nora, if you are reading this, then your mother has come to the table after many years away. Remember first that you do not owe pain a performance. You do not owe anyone a scene. I swallowed. Linda looked down. Grant watched me instead of the documents. I kept reading. I have made my choices clearly, and while sound of mind, I have left my home and estate to you, because you were my family, in the daily meaning of the word. You were there for ordinary Tuesdays, for bad hips, for burnt bread, for library fundraisers, for quiet dinners, for hospital chairs, and for the long work of loving someone when there is no audience for it. My voice cracked once. Then I read on. Blood explains where a person came from. Presence proves where they chose to stay. Linda is my sister, and I do not deny that. But you were the child left behind, and then you became the woman who stayed. I am not punishing anyone by leaving my estate to you. I am telling the truth in the only legal language the world reliably respects. Grant looked away. I finished the letter. If anyone tells you that you took what was not yours, remember this. You did not take my home. You came home. You did not take my money. You honored the life that built it. You did not replace anyone. You were simply present where others were absent. Presence is not a small thing, Nora. It is everything. I love you. Keep the porch swing painted. I put the letter down. No one spoke. For the first time since she entered the room, my mother looked older than her coat, older than her polished nails, older than the story she had brought with her. Then she whispered, "I am still your mother." I looked at her. "No," I said. "You are the woman who left the note. She was the woman who came." My mother closed her eyes. Grant exhaled through his nose. Patricia quietly gathered the documents, but she left the blue folder on the table. Linda opened her eyes and said, "I can still contest this." Her voice had changed. Less grief, more threat. There she was. Patricia slid the folder toward her. "Then this is the file your attorney will receive first." My mother stared at it. Inside that folder was not just paper. It was 15 years of absence made visible. Every school form Aunt Ruth signed because Linda had not. Every medical consent. Every returned letter. Every record of no support. Every official line that said what my mother wanted to soften into circumstance. Grant pushed his chair back slightly. "Linda," he said, "we should go." She turned on him. "You are taking her side." He looked at the note again. "I am reading the page." Linda stood so fast her chair scraped the floor. At the door, she turned back to me. "You will regret shutting me out." I almost smiled. I did not have to shut her out. She had done that herself. I said, "I hope you get whatever help lets you stop calling locked doors unfair." Grant left first. Linda followed. The door closed behind them with a soft click. Not a slam, just a small office door closing on a 15-year lie. If someone left you at 10 and came back for everything at 25, would you give them a second chance, or let the truth finish the conversation? After they were gone, Patricia asked if I needed a moment. I nodded. She left the room. I sat alone with Aunt Ruth's letter. For years I thought revenge would feel loud if it ever came. I thought it would look like shouting, someone crying harder than I had cried a perfect sentence said while everyone watched. But sitting in that conference room, I realized revenge can be quiet. Sometimes it is an old note kept flat in a plastic sleeve. Sometimes it is a guardianship order. Sometimes it is a woman who knew she might not be there to defend you, so she built a paper wall high enough that nobody could climb over it and call it love. Patricia came back with a glass of water. "Your aunt was very clear," she said. I laughed through my tears. She usually was. Patricia opened a smaller note. "She wanted me to tell you this after the reading. The house is not a museum. Live in it. Change the curtains if you hate them. Keep what matters. Do not keep everything, just because grief asks loudly." Of course. Even dead, Aunt Ruth was preventing clutter. There was my 5th grade enrollment form, Aunt Ruth's handwriting in the guardian box, the first dentist bill, the science museum permission slip, the math tutoring receipt. The returned letter marked refused. Presents. Not as an idea. As evidence. I moved into the blue house at the end of that month. I kept my apartment lease until it ended because Aunt Ruth had raised me to read contracts and not pay unnecessary penalties. Then I carried my boxes into the room where I had slept after she drove through the night. The house felt both full and empty. The cats had opinions. The porch swing needed sanding. My mother had not disappeared from my story. People like that rarely do. They leave marks. They leave questions. They leave strange reflexes like apologizing when someone else drops a glass. But after the will reading, she no longer owned the empty space. Aunt Ruth did. Not because she filled it with money. Because she filled it with proof. Proof that I had been worth crossing a state for. Proof that I had been worth feeding, teaching, correcting, protecting. Proof that love could be documented not to make it colder, but to keep it from being stolen by people who arrived late and spoke loudly. My mother came back for the house. Aunt Ruth left me a home. Those are not the same thing. I wrote about the note on the grocery receipt. I wrote about headlights at 2 a.m. I wrote about the blue folder on the lawyer table, and how my mother could not touch the copy of her own words. I wrote about presence. How it is not one big heroic moment. It is 1,000 small returns. Someone saving a note for 15 years because one day a woman with polished nails might try to rename abandonment as hardship. I wanted to tell her that Linda had come. I wanted to tell her that the file worked. I wanted to tell her that I had read the letter without falling apart until the end. But maybe she already knew. Maybe that was what all her preparation had been. A way of staying one more time. 15 years earlier, I had sat outside a different house waiting for people who were already gone. Now I sat outside this one knowing exactly who had come. Aunt Ruth had not given me everything because I lost my mother. She gave me everything because she had become my home. And the woman who left me with a note finally had to sit in a room and listen while the truth read itself out loud. If you like quiet revenge where love keeps the receipts, subscribe and stay with me for the next one.